My name is Jamin. I'm your first friend in Alaska. I'm also an associate real estate broker in South Central Alaska, and today we're going to be talking about some of the big things that nobody really tells you about when you're buying property in Alaska. These are going to be some things that you might not necessarily expect, and it's really just kind of my personal list from having worked up here for nearly a decade. So we'll be jumping into that in just a minute. Before we get started though, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and do all that good stuff that makes the algorithm know that this channel is blessed and it's giving good information that's helping people. Now, without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, these are going to be in no particular order, but I would say one of the big things that not a whole lot of people are going to tell you is the smaller the town is that you're trying to get into, or the smaller the community, the sketchier it gets. Okay, I'm telling you, I've had like some of the most sketchy things happen in some of the smallest towns here real estate wise. And I think that's because they just kind of have a well, if you don't like it, what are you going to do about it kind of attitude. And it is absolutely mind-boggling to the point where I've seriously thought about making a number of violation reports and complaints against certain individuals just because they were just playing it so fast and loose with what the actual rules are. And I found like the smaller the community, again, if you're going into like a small little town, I'm not going to name names because that's rude. But if you're going into small little towns, you're more likely to run into that. And some places are known more for that than others. And to the point where like sellers meet people out on the front lawns and they're like, "Oh, you're from Anchorage? Okay, well, I'm not even interested in selling to you. And thanks for making this 3-hour drive and go away." Just sketchy stuff like that. So yeah, just know sometimes if you're trying to get into a small community, it can be a bit of a headache and you might get some sketchy stuff like that. I mean, that's just rude. That's not even sketchy. We can talk off air about the sketchy stuff, okay? All right, now this second one, this is going to be more from my conversations with people who've recently done this, and that is that in some places, kind of in the far north, sellers can be insanely unreasonable to the point where their house has been sitting on the market for like weeks and weeks and weeks. You come up, give them a full price offer, and they immediately come back with higher asking price, and they're asking now $20,000 or $30,000 above what they originally asked for. And again, it's kind of that small town mentality where they're just like, well, if you don't like it, then who else are you going to go to? And to the point where it's just disgusting. Greedy, honestly, and it's pretty off-putting. Seems like a really great way to really off-put a lot of people. Another big one for people is just know that raw land is usually going to be an all-cash kind of a deal. I know this is something that a lot of people really dream about, and they're like, hey, look, there's this piece of raw land. It's only $100,000, and it's like 40 acres out in the middle of nowhere. Man, if we put a 30-year mortgage on that, like that's only going to be like $50 a month, so on and so forth. What you have to know is there's really no bank that I know of out there that's offering 30-year notes on a piece of raw land. It is usually an all-cash deal, or you're going to have some kind of a big down payment and like a really short, like 5, maybe 10-year note that's going to allow you to pay for it. So just know, getting into raw land and buying raw land, developing, that is almost always an all-cash deal. All right, another big one. And I know this is going to trigger some of you, but a lot of people think that just because they find a seller willing to sell to them off market, then that means that it must be a good deal. Usually, I found that this usually is not the case. And the reason for that is that you have to really kind of think practically and go, okay, why is it that this seller is foregoing the opportunity of getting their home onto the market where they're going to get the highest and best offers? Why are they foregoing that and just selling to me directly? Usually it's not because they're just feeling really charitable and just, they're just wanting to be nice and all that. Usually it's more because there's something wrong with the property, or there's something about the situation where if there was a real estate professional there, they'd be throwing a flag on the plan saying, hey, hold on, let's take this slow. Let's make sure we do this correctly. And sellers like that usually don't really appreciate that. And so they're going to try to edge any professional real estate representation out of the transaction altogether. Now, that's not to say that everyone trying to sell to you directly as a seller is sketchy, but it is also saying it's a lot more complicated than a lot of people think it is. because unfortunately real estate agents have downplayed the amount of professional knowledge that actually goes into this. And we've made it seem like it's really simple just to make it a less stressful transaction for people. But there is actually a lot of stuff you need to know that do have like real lasting consequences and can really booger stuff up. And again, you just have to think, hey, why is this person selling to you off market when they could get a lot more selling it on the market and having competing offers if it's really that good of a property? Competition for a property is not always a bad thing, okay? I know a lot of buyers out there over the years who have said, hey, if there's even one other offer on the table, then we're out. We do not want to get into any competitive situation whatsoever. And if there's an offer on the table, then we're out. We're just going to go find something else. So in years past, in the years of lore, I want to say you could probably do this and be fine. In this market where there's hardly any competition, hardly any inventory, it creates a lot of competition for the really good homes that are out there. It is just assumed if it's a good property and it's priced correctly, there's going to be competition for it. And this is, this is something you just have to be ready for if you're jumping into it. And if I'm looking at it and there's like no competition whatsoever for this property that I'm looking at, I'm honestly second guessing myself, and that might be because I've been in this market for a while at this point. But if there's no one else interested in the property, this makes me think ahead to, okay, is this going to be a pain for trying to sell this thing later? Like, are people not going to be interested in buying this from me when it's my turn to be the seller? These are the kind of things I'm thinking about. If there's a ton of competition for it, then at least that alleviates that. Obviously, don't go in too crazy and just make a bunch of crazy offers and get too competitive. There's a point where it's wise to just back off and say, hey, whoa, we don't want that smoke. That's too much. We're not willing to do that to win the bidding war, win this property. But just know that just intrinsically, because there's competition for the property, does not necessarily mean that you should just walk away. All right, let's take a quick break here real quick just to make sure everyone gets the point. I am, in fact, a real estate agent, if this video didn't give it away. And if you're looking to make a move up here, certainly feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to help. I know a lot of people kind of see the production quality and everything here and just kind of assume that YouTube's doing so well that's paying the bills. Directly from YouTube, I barely make enough to like cover half of the cost for the editing. So bread and butter, still helping people buy and sell real estate. Also, if you're looking at making a move up here soon, do feel free to reach out to me, and I'll make sure to send you a copy of my relocation guide. Link for that is going to be in the description section down below. You go to my website, register, put relocation guide in the comment section, and I'll make sure I send that over to you. Okay, shameless plugging here is over. Let's go ahead and get on with the video. Okay, this next one, it's really something that I find a lot of first-time home buyers really fall into, and that is just assuming just because it's cheap, it must be a good deal. Okay, sometimes cheap, as your more salty people in the market will tell you, is indicative that there's something about the property that is something you really need to be concerned about. If this property is like $50,000 under what you see everywhere else, I'm probably not just assuming that the seller just is completely oblivious to the market. And I'm starting to look at stuff like, is the ground really boggy? Is it really close to like a busy road and they're going to be broadening that road out soon? Is there a problem with the roof? Is there foundation issues? Like stuff like that. So just because you found something cheap does not make it a good deal. All right, another one real quick, and this is more for those of you interested in kind of the remote and off-grid lifestyle. If you find something that is really remote and it is like cheap and it's like, okay, awesome, I was able to get in there. This is like 10 acres. I bought it for, I don't know, $30,000 or something like that. That's a good get. And also you have to factor in, it is going to be a lot more expensive to get stuff out there and to actually develop it. Because that's not something a whole lot of people think about when they're in the home or in the raw land purchasing phase of, how are we going to get stuff out here and how expensive is that going to be to do that? I'm telling you, it is a lot more expensive moving stuff like snow machine in the wintertime, like 10 miles as opposed to like 50. Like it's just a completely different equation. So do make sure that you kind of factor in how expensive it is going to be to transport stuff to these more remote areas. There is no such thing as one quintessential Alaskan town. Okay, every community is going to have its own flavor, and it's going to have kind of its own culture. So if you're from the outside looking in, know that these communities are not really interchangeable. There's going to be some similarities, yes, but there are going to be other towns and other areas where, like, if you don't like a lot of really loud outdoor motors, then you're probably not going to like this town. Or if you're really into that stuff, this is probably a quiet little area, and you're just not going to jive very well with the neighbors. So just kind of know that there is a difference between these different communities, and you just need to kind of get the vibe of the tribe and get on the ground and get a chance to actually talk to people and interact. And that's going to be your best bet there. Last but not least, there is not a whole lot of zoning in Alaska, and this can both be a good thing and a bad thing. Now, if you're in the municipality of Anchorage, so that's like, the main part of Anchorage, Chugiak, Eagle River, Girdwood, Anchorage is huge when you look at it on the map, and most of that is going to be pretty well zoned out. When you look at somewhere like the Matsu Valley, though, there's not a whole lot of zoning there, and that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. So it does mean that businesses and builders can develop a lot faster because they're not having to coordinate with zoning and everything. But it also can have kind of a darker side to it because as things develop and the community, we're not being very intentional in how we're wanting things to look in the coming decades. You can get a lot of situations where you've got like a dadgum mechanic shop right in the middle of the neighborhood, or you've got like a neighborhood junkyard right over here, and it creates a mess. So sometimes zoning can be really good because there's less restrictions and everyone can kind of just do whatever they want. Usually people aren't going to abuse this, but sometimes they do, and zoning's not something you can really point back to as something to put a stop to it. So this has been my video talking about talking about things you should just be aware of if you're looking at making a move up here to Alaska. I hope it's been useful. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll see you next time.